Hello aspirants, welcome to Epitome IAS. This is Mansoor. So as a part of this Ncrt series, so far we have discussed 6th class Ncrt, and after that we have seen 7th class Ncrt, and today we are going to see the chapter 2 of 8th class Ncrt. So in this chapter 2, what we are going to see, we are going to understand the land, the soil, water, natural vegetation, as well as wildlife resources. So in this particular chapter, we will be seeing what is the meaning of what we have to see under the concept of this land, and what is the basic definition of soil, and what are the factors that contribute to the formation of soil, and what is the importance of water, and the amount of water that is present on the surface of the earth, and the content related to this water we will be seeing in this particular chapter. And we will be seeing what is meant by natural vegetation as well as wildlife resources. Okay, so in first chapter already we have discussed that we discussed about resources. So what is meant by resource? Resource is something which is found in the nature of the earth. So these resources we can classify or differentiate into two things. One, natural resources. Second one is man-made resources. In natural resources as well, we have seen there are two types of natural resources. One renewable, second one is non-renewable. And we have seen what is meant by human-made resources. Okay. So and in that chapter we have seen what is meant by resource conservation. Okay. And we have seen what is meant by sustainable development, and we have already discussed the 6 principles of sustainable development in chapter number 1. So in chapter number 2 we will see, as I told you earlier, we will be talking about land, soil, water. Already we have discussed somewhere in previous NCRTs, we have discussed regarding these topics. Right. So without any delay, if you see the first topic in this particular chapter, it talks about land. So what we have understood so far? So far we have understood that Earth is having 30% of land, and remaining 70% it is covered with water. Okay, this is basic thing. And here what we have to understand is 90% of world population, that means 90% of world population will be occupying 30% of land. That means 30% of total available land. So remaining 10% of people will be seen in the remaining 70% of the total available land that is presented on the earth. Okay, so this is the point which we should understand. Now the point here is, if you see the distribution of the land, and if you see in terms of usability of that land, you can tell that the land is unevenly distributed, as well as the usability of land is also unevenly distributed. And we can tell that the population which is presented on the earth is also unevenly distributed. That means majority of the people are living only in 30% of available land. Okay, the land itself is only 30%. In that 30%, 30% is occupied with 90% of population. That means there is some uneven distribution of land. So if you see the uneven distribution of land or the uneven usability of land, obviously there should be some factors. So if you go back and if you see what are the factors that are affecting this uneven distribution, obviously the main factor would be, if you see the factors would be geographical factors. First one, topography. So what is meant by topography? See, we already seen that landforms. Okay, we are having plateaus, plains, and mountains, deserts, all these things. And if you see the topography of plain, obviously the plains are more suitable lands for population. Okay, more suitable lands for development. And when compared to the mountains, population in plain areas will be very high. And if you see the steeps of the mountains, obviously in steeps of the mountains as well, you cannot see that much of settlement. So the important factor which is playing is topography. And second one, steep slopes. And third one, low lying areas where susceptibility of water is very high. And fourth one is climate of that particular area and minerals which were found in that particular area. So all these things are the reasons or factors for uneven distribution of population in different parts of the world. So because of this uneven distribution of population only, we can see that less amount of area has been used by large amount of population. Now if you see here, what is meant by land use? If you use your common sense, we can tell that land use is nothing but the land which we are using. Okay, but the point here is the land which we are using. If you see the reasons why we are using the land, the reasons would be obviously the land would be used for agriculture, and the land would be used for forestry, and the land would be used for building houses, and the same land would be used for construction of roads, and we can use this land for industries, construction of industries. Okay, so the point here is again the usage of land would be not evenly distributed. So again, what are the reasons? Again the reasons would be same, topography. Again the reasons would be the climatic conditions. Again the reasons would be the availability of water, and again the reasons would be minerals that were available in that particular region. Okay, and human factors such as population and technology also determine the usage of land. That means people will be using lands if they are very favorable for living, and if they are having technology, obviously they will be using that technology in order to convert that particular land into usable land. Okay, so humans as well as technology is also one of the important factor that plays a major role in usage of land. If you see in olden days, majority of the area is covered with forests, but what happened because of invention of or because of discovery of iron, using that iron tools, people started felling off the trees, and people started spreading their habitation into the forests. Okay, and after that, in process of evolution, the technology has evolved in such a way that we are destructing the environment and we are creating the habitats. And if that habitat has been created in a sustainable way, obviously the use will be for both environment as well as humans. If that is happening in unsustainable way, repercussions will be there. Are you getting my point? The point here is what we should understand. We should stick to the point that usage of the land is depending upon the factors like topography, climatic conditions, availability of water, availability of minerals. And the land which we are using can be categorized with respect to the agendas of the people. One, they might be using for agriculture purpose, they will be using for forestry, and they will be using for construction of industries as well. Okay, so then next what we have to understand from this particular topic is, we can see that land which is available, we can demarcate into two types. One, private lands, second one, community lands. See, if you see this private land, what is meant by private land? The land which was held with private players, private individuals. Okay, and what is meant by community land? Community land is such land where the people in the community will be having rights on that particular land. What kind of rights they will be having? They cannot go and they cannot sell that particular land to some other person claiming that they are having rights. So the point here is these community lands can be used for gathering of fruits, gathering of herbs, gathering of fodder, and a gathering of some other medicinal herbs. Okay, and these community lands which we are using, which were used by community, they are called as common property resources. Everyone will be having a common rights on these resources. The point here is you should not go and you should not try to privatize that particular land. You can get the benefits of benefits from that common land, like as I told you earlier. Now if you see here, then how these private lands were created? Obviously private lands were created by encroachment of the people on this particular community resources, okay, community land. So once when human beings started encroachments, when this private land has been started or has been created, if that private land is taken by someone else and if they are doing some activities in that particular land which is sustainable, then it won't be that problem, because see that private land, in that private land one can start doing agriculture, like subsistence agriculture, or one can start the construction of their own houses, or one can start the construction of industries, schools. Okay, but the point here is, because since they are having that private land, if people are willing to exploit that land to the maximum levels with an unsustainable ways, obviously there would be some challenges, or there would be some repercussions. What are they? Nowadays you can see the degradation of land is very high. Land degradation is very high. Soil pollution is very high. Okay, because of that we are having severe impact on climate. Climatic changes are also seen. Okay, so the negative impacts or the negative things because of the excessive encroachment of private lands and excessive unsustainable ways, we can see land degradation, soil erosion, desertification, and landslides are the major threats to environment. Why? Reason? Because of excessive agriculture and constructional activities. So far it is okay. Now what we should do? Okay, now people has encroached the lands. Now they are having private lands, and whatever the land which has remained, that remained as an community land. Community land is nothing but the government land. Right. Now the next important step would be conservation of land resources. Obviously, when the land has been excessively used, and after using to an maximum extent, we have to start conserving the land resources. Okay, if you see, the growing population is seen in every year. The population will be growing in every year. Obviously, when population is growing, the demand for their needs are also will be growing. So because of the excessive growth and excessive demands from the people, what we are doing, we are deforesting the forest area and we are starting the settlements there. So that is one of the major problem, because of that excessive large scale of destruction and destruction of forest, obviously we will be losing some forest cover. So when forest cover is lost, obviously there would be climatic changes, and because of that climatic changes, disasters would be happening. Okay, now what we have to do? We understood that the land has been degrading. We should do some conservation activities. So if you see some examples of the conservation activities which we should be doing is, first of all, we should start afforestation. Because of excessive constructions, we started doing deforestation. Now we should focus on afforestation. That is one of the important method or important part in conservation of a forest. Second, Second, important thing would be less use of chemicals in agriculture. Because of less high use, the land has already been degraded and soil erosion already has been started, and we have to reclaim the land. That means we have to start taking back the land which has been encroached. Okay, so these things would be done in conservation of lands. Then the next important point is soil. So what is the basic definition of soil? Soil is nothing but it is a thin layer or thin covering of grainy substances. That means the topmost layer on the soil, on the surface of the earth, we call that topmost layer, which consists of some grainy substances, as soil. See, if you see here, if you see this picture, you can easily tell that at the bottom we will be having parent rock. On the above parent rock we will be having weathered rock material which has been weathered from this parent rock. Now what is meant by weathering? Weathering is nothing but it is a process of breaking up or decaying of an exposed rocks by some factors. What are they? Temperature, pressure, and some human activities. So because of these things, the parent rock will be starting breaking up, and it will be starting decaying up. Okay, so above parent rock we can see the layer of weathered rock, and above the layer of weathered rock we can see the subsoil with the sand, with silt and clay. Here you will be seeing the mixture of sand, silt and clay, and above that we will be seeing the top soil. Okay, the soil which is having the humus content. The humus content will be very high in that particular soil, and this humus content will be useful for, or it will be beneficial for agriculture. Okay, right. Now the point here is this soil which we are seeing on the topmost surface, topmost layer, this soil is made up of a mixture of certain things. What are they? One, organic matter, and you will be having some kind of minerals, and you will be having weathered particles which were formed because of weathering. All these things we can see in soil. And if you see the factors that were important, or the factors which were leading for the formation of soil, you can differentiate these factors into 5. First, the most and important thing is parent rock. If there is no parent rock, there won't be weathering, and if there is no weathering, there will be not, we don't have soil. So obviously parent rock is one of the important factor. So what happens because of parent rock? The color of the soil would be determined by using or by seeing this parent rock. If the parent rock is black in color, obviously the soil which was weathered or which was created because of weathering would be in black color. And the texture of the soil is determined by the parent rock, and chemical properties of that particular soil and minerals and permeability of soil is determined by parent rock. Then the second important factor is relief. What is in by relief? Relief is nothing but the altitude, height, slope, and the process of accumulation of soil will be determining the character of this particular soil. Then flora, fauna and microorganisms. These flora, fauna and microorganisms would be helpful in creation of humus. Okay, so the soil, whether that particular soil is having humus or not, is dependent on the factors such as flora, fauna and microorganisms. Then time is also important factor. How? The thickness of the soil profile is determined because of time, through time. Okay, then climate also plays an important role in determining the soil. It also plays an important role in formation of the soil. So first, temperature, rain, as well as the rate of weathering and humus, these things will determine the factors for formation of soil. Then, so what are the measures that should be taken in order to conserve this soil? If you want to conserve this soil, we should start doing mulching. What is in by mulching? Mulching is nothing but covering the topmost layer with some other dried leaves or some other organic matter like straw. Then counter barriers is also one of the important measure. So in counter barriers, what we will be doing? We will be using stones, grass and soil to build barriers along the counters of the land. Okay, then rock dam. Rock dam is also an important method. Here what we'll be doing, rocks are used. They will be piled up to slow down the flow of water. So what happens if there is a flow of water? When there is flow of water, obviously the small materials or the small particles will be starting running off with the water. The water will be moving the particles from one place to another place. Okay, that granules will be moving. So in order to stop that soil degradation or soil erosion, we will be using rock dams. In rock dams, we will be using the rock structures would be used. So when water is flowing, when all the materials are coming along with the water, these rocks will be helpful as a stoppage. So in that way we can stop soil erosion. Then terrace forming is one of the important technique, as well as intercropping, counter ploughing and shelter belts are also the important measures that can be taken for conservation of soil. Then water. So what we have to understand, we already understood that water is an important resource that is present on the surface of the earth. So the first life which has been created, it has been created from water, and we already know that 70% of the land, 70% of the earth is filled with water. Okay, and out of this water we are having only 2.7% of fresh water. Okay, and of this nearly 70% of fresh water we will be seeing in ice sheets and glaciers. Okay, only 1% of water would be available for human beings, and this only 1% of fresh water is there, and only this 1% is fit for human use. And even this 1% of water is found as groundwater. And on surface water will be there in rivers as well as lakes. Right. So then the next important topic would be problems of water availability. So if you see these water problems, obviously we know that majority of the earth surface is covered with 70% of water. Even though the majority of the surface is covered with water, still we are having problems regarding this water availability. Why? We only one out of all the water which are having, only 1% of water, only 1% of 2.7% of fresh water is available and suitable for drinking. Okay, so if you see many countries, like if you see most of the African countries, West Asian countries, South Asian countries, and some parts of Western USA and Northwest Mexico and parts of South America and entire Australia is facing the shortage of fresh water supplies. Even though abundance of water is high, the amount of fresh water is very less. And what we have to do for this conservation of water resources? So in order to access to clean and adequate water sources, which is the major problem we are facing today, what we have to do? We have to conserve this water. What are the methods or what are the things we can be doing for conservation? We have to start discharging of untreated or partially treated sewage and agricultural chemicals, as well as industrial effluents in water bodies. All this water can be collected, and all this water can be reused by using certain methods, certain techniques. That means the water which we are wasting, or the water which is the product of this wastage, can be reused by treating that particular water. And because of this discharge of untreated and partially treated sewage, when this sewage or untreated water is mixed with the already available water in rivers and lakes, this water will be contaminating that particular things as well. Okay, then natural vegetation and wildlife. So if you see here, in earlier classes we have seen that this is atmosphere, this is hydrosphere, and this is lithosphere. And there is a common area between atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere. This common area we call it as an biosphere. Okay. So what happens in biosphere? All the living organisms are interrelated or interconnected on each other. So in biosphere you will be finding plants, you will be finding animals, you will be finding humans, you will be finding water, and you will be finding creatures in water. The point here is all the living organisms which is presented in biosphere is interdependent or interrelated on each other. Okay. And this life supporting interrelation which is present in biosphere, we call that as ecosystem. Are you getting my point? We call that as ecosystem. And vegetation and wildlife are valuable resources that were found in this particular ecosystem. Why? Because plants will be providing timber, they will be providing a shelter for animals, they will be providing oxygen that humans were breathing, and they will be protecting soils which are essential for growing of crops as well as shelter belts. And these plants will be giving us fruits, these plants will be giving us latex, gum, medicinal plants, and also the paper which we are using is a byproduct of these plants. And if you see the wildlife which is included in that ecosystem, you will be finding animals, you will be finding birds, insects, as well as you will be finding aquatic form of life. And how these wildlife is helping the other creatures in ecosystem biosphere, they will be providing meat, they will be providing milk, they will be providing wool. And if you see the insects like a bee, it will be providing us honey, and it will be helping in pollination of flower, and it will be playing an important role as an decomposers in the ecosystem. And if you see the birds, what is the role of birds? These birds will be contributing, these birds will be feeding on the insects, and even these birds also act as an decomposers. And if you see the vulture particularly, it has the ability to feed on dead livestock as scavengers, and this vulture is considered as a vital cleanser of environment. Okay. So these are the roles of plants, that is flora and fauna, which is present in biosphere. And if you see the natural vegetation, distribution of natural vegetation, the growth of vegetation depends primarily on temperature and moisture. Okay, if there is suitable temperature and if there is a suitable moisture, obviously there are certain kinds of plants which were grown in that particular area. If you see the major vegetation types that were present in the world, you can demarcate or you can divide these major vegetations into four. One, forests. Second one, grasslands. Third one, scrubs. Fourth one, tundra. So these are the major vegetations that were presented or that were spread across the world. And if you see the areas of heavy rainfall, huge trees, in these particular regions, the areas where we are having huge rainfall, huge trees will be seen. So if you see the rainforests, obviously in rainforests, the flora, if you take any plants will be of higher heights. Okay, the length of the plant would be the length of the trees would be very high. And if you see the moisture, earlier we told that the temperature and moisture will be playing a major important role in growth of vegetation. If you see the moisture is high, obviously the growth of plant will be high. When the moisture has been reduced, what happens? Obviously, when moisture is reduced, the density and the size of the tree would be reduced. Okay, in the regions of moderate rainfalls, you will be having short trees as well as grass. And in dry areas and low rainfall region, you will be seeing shrubs, you will be seeing thorny shrubs, and you will be seeing small shrubs which would be growing. Okay, in such areas, what happens? Plants will be having deep roots, where in areas where there is the climate is very dry and the rainfall is very low. Okay, and if you see the forests, we can divide the forests into two, one evergreen forest and deciduous forest. So depending upon the temperature or depending upon the rainfall, we will be differentiating them. In evergreen forest, what we'll be seeing, in evergreen forest you cannot see the shedding of leaves. Okay, in deciduous forest, obviously depending upon the seasons, depending upon the availability of water, the shedding of the leaves will be happening. Why the shedding of the leaves will happen? In order to conserve the moisture which is presented in that tree. We can see in particular seasons leaves will be shedding off. Okay, and if you see this forest, we can even further classify this forest into two types. One, a tropical or temperate based, depending upon the location of different altitudes. For suppose the area between Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, we call it as a tropical area, and the area between Tropic of Cancer to Arctic Circle and the area between Tropic of Capricorn to Antarctic Circle, we call that particular zone as temperate zones. So depending upon this zone as well, we can see the different types of forests. Okay, now the conservation of natural resource and vegetation. Obviously, what are the things which we should be following in conservation of a natural resource and wildlife? So we should be focusing upon the things which are very sustainable. Okay, we can use them but in a sustainable way. So what are the some methods? Obviously, deforestation is one of the drawback or one of the thing which is affecting the conservation, which is affecting the wildlife and natural vegetation, and soil erosion and constructional activities are some of the human made and natural factors which will be affecting the wildlife and natural vegetation. Now what we have to do, what we should be following some techniques which will be, now we should follow the techniques which are useful for which should conserve the natural vegetation and wildlife resources. So what would be those things? Obviously, from individual perspective, we should stop using excessive, or we should stop abusing the forest, and we should stop abusing the wildlife. And the government also should come up with certain activities which can be used as an conservation methods or conservation techniques. Okay, so in this chapter only the fundamentals have been covered. In depth, we haven't covered in this chapter because there is no content, in-depth content in this particular chapter. So in next class we will be seeing the third chapter, that is chapter number 3. This chapter number 3 talks about agriculture. Okay, so in this we will be seeing what is meant by agriculture, what is the role of agriculture, and particularly if you talk about this Ncrt chapter, we will be seeing the types of agriculture we are having, the types of farming we are having. Okay, and we will be seeing he will be comparing with agriculture in India and agriculture in USA. So we will be seeing all those things in this particular chapter. Okay, so thank you so much for watching this video. If you are having any doubts, let me know in comments, and as I told you, in next chapter we will be seeing agriculture topic.